Okay, well, my clock says it's time to start. So welcome everyone to this webinar of the Wagner Society of Northern California. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We have a wonderful program today. Now, the announced program was one that indicated we would be welcoming Ragnar Conde who will be the stage director for the West Bay Opera's upcoming Flying Dutchman. And we have a surprise guest, and this is really delightful. Jose Luis Moscovich, who will be conducting. He is the music director and principal conductor for West Bay Opera. I said West Edge, I'm sorry, West Bay Opera, pardon me. Don't want to confuse the two. So thank you for coming today. The topic is going to be the Flying Dutchman, which will be presented in just a few weeks in Palo Alto, and we'll hear more about that. I'll first introduce the stage director for the Flying Dutchman at West Bay Opera. A native of Mexico, Ragnar Conde is one of the most important Mexican opera stage directors. He does all sorts of directing. He's participated in over 150 performing arts projects in Mexico, the United States, France, Switzerland, and Colombia. These projects include theater, opera, musicals, concerts, and films, with credits from ranging from stage director, producer, writer, and acting coach to scenic and lighting and costume designer. Conde was the Apprentice Stage Director selected for the Merola Opera Program in 2011 at the San Francisco Opera Center. So welcome, Ragnar. And also we have with us Jose Luis Moscovich. This is his second visit to the Wagner Society of Northern California. And after a distinguished career in transportation planning and education, Maestro Moscovich has devoted his spare time now to opera and vocal music. He's been the general director of West Bay Opera since 2006. And for the preceding decade, he was the music director and conductor of the San Francisco Camerata, the only professional orchestra in the US devoted exclusively to the music of Latin American composers. So welcome to these wonderful maestri, as it were. And I'm going to go ahead and hide myself and turn the program over to these gentlemen. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sari.
And thanks to the Wagner Society for giving us an opportunity to participate again and reach out to audiences with talk about our upcoming production. Let me just give you a few remarks and then let Ragnar talk about the specifics of this production. The company is on its 67th season. We are the second oldest opera company in the West after San Francisco Opera. And we have done this piece now 3 times: in 1968, when it was conducted by the founder of the company, and then 1986. And then in 2008, a couple of years after I took over as general director, I conducted the production that year. So we do it, but we don't do it terribly often. And you might ask yourself why we program it. And there are really 3 main reasons. The first one is I only program what I love, and I really love this piece. I think this piece is a very, very meaningful Wagner choice in terms of repertoire. It doesn't get enough exposure, in my view. So you can't have too much of the Flying Dutchman. And it's also a great introduction to Wagner for people who have not experienced Wagner in the theater. And we've got enough anti-opera biases to deal with in the world, in this modern society in which we live. And I think that here's an opera that embodies all of the main principles of Wagner's philosophy of operatic composing, and it's short. It's very engaging, And I think it's very easy to absorb for a public that may not be ready for a 5-hour late Wagner opera. So it's important to try to showcase it. We're doing it on 4 dates. Pardon me, at the end of May 26, 28, and then the first weekend in June, June 3rd and June 4th at the Lucy Stern Theater in Palo Alto. And of course, we encourage you to get your tickets early because it's a very popular piece on the peninsula, and I'm pretty sure we're going to sell out. About the Flying Dutchman itself, I'd like to just remind our audience that this piece really is very significant because it's the first Wagner opera that really includes the 3 fundamental principles that Wagner included in his operatic construction theory, which are the employment of a mythological or legendary theme or subject that gets developed dramatically or treated dramatically. Then the representation of the subject or the spirit or the nature of the conflict in an intelligible way, and so that it's really the drama and the text that are driving each of the scenes and each of the acts, rather than it being just a succession of individual pieces, arias and ensembles and so on, that are more formulaic in nature. And finally, and related to the second principle, is the use of representative theme or typical phrase, or what we call in German a Leitmotiv. And this is not the first time or the only composer who ventured into that set of ideas, but it's really the first consistent use of leitmotifs, which later, of course, developed into something much more complex in the more mature Wagner operas. But this basic system of the 3 principles is really first clearly visible in the Flying Dutchman, and so it is great as an introduction to Wagner's approach to opera altogether. Now, there's likely many people in the Wagner Society that know a lot more about Wagner and his canon than Ragnar and I put together, and the intent is not to lecture you about the basics, but rather to show you how we have worked to put the piece together. One of the things that are a driving theme for me, obviously for every stage director, but for me as a conductor also, is the need to work jointly to generate a space that's in the style of what Wagner wanted, a Gesamtkunstwerk. You know, it's the music in the service of the text, and all of the aesthetics around both of those together, working together. And so the sets and the costumes and the lighting and the projections that we do and everything that happens in and around the stage are elements of a single well-oiled machine that's intended to produce, in the end, a set of feelings, a set of emotions that are dramatically very intense and that essentially drive the story and result in a very clear storyline. And of course, this isn't just in Wagner, and Ragnar and I have done it many times together, you know, at least a dozen times before in all kinds of operatic repertoire. But it's particularly interesting and particularly important to have that organicity of work together in Wagner. So let me stop there. I will tell you that we are using an orchestral reduction. It's an unavoidable aspect of playing in a small theater like the Lucy Stern. We do have an orchestra pit, but now for a number of years we have placed the strings in the pit, occasionally a harp or some other keyboard, and then the winds and the percussion are actually on the sides of the stage, semi-hidden from the public, and creating essentially a situation where the performers are enveloped in orchestral music, which has worked for us better than trying to squeeze an entire orchestra into the pit, and given us the opportunity to expand a little bit the instruments that we can use for repertoire like this, which really requires a fairly substantial orchestra. So, but that notwithstanding, for this production, we're doing a reduction that involves 38 instruments. And I have great hopes for it. I think that you will find it very satisfying and very full-bodied in terms of the sound that it produces. And the other great thing is that we have been successful in recruiting a fairly large chorus. So those wonderful choral scenes with the sailors and in the third act are going to be nicely well-rounded in that sense, and I think very satisfying. And so the last thing I wanted to mention is that we have a pretty stellar cast for this. For those who are interested in the German repertoire and were able to come and see a production that we did a number of years ago, also with Ragnar as stage director of Beethoven's Fidelio. The Leonore in that Fidelio is going to be our Senta, and she is her name is Meredith Bloomfield. She is a Wagnerian soprano with a budding career in Europe. She has been living in Berlin since 2018, and I think you will find her really pretty extraordinary as a Senta, as a very sensitive and very expressive voice, which also is very fulfilling because it's a truly Wagnerian voice. Our Dutchman is going to be Robert Balonek, who has recently been engaged by Opera San Jose in several things. Who's an extraordinary young singer that I think will lend a very interesting sense of virility and youth to this and timelessness to this character of the Dutchman. And then the cast is rounded out by John Kuhn Park, very gifted tenor who sang our Ismaele in Nabucco several years ago, right before the pandemic. So he will be our Eric, and our Mary is going to be another gifted local singer, mezzo-soprano, Laure de Marcellus, who sang the Countess in our Pic Dame recently. And finally, our Steuermann is kind of a luxury casting because we are lucky to have with us for that Salvatore Atti, who is also a Merola graduate. And for those of you who follow West Bay Opera, is the extraordinary Don Jose that we had for the Carmen that we did in 2018. So to have him as a Steuermann is going to be a really wonderful opportunity to hear that role sung by a voice of that caliber. So that's our cast. We are very much looking forward to getting into the rehearsal process soon. And let me now turn it over to Ragnar so that he can give you a bit of a sense of how we are imagining the production for this particular iteration.
Thank you so much, Jose Luis. Well, I want to thank again the Wagner Society for inviting us, and it's quite challenging to put together a Wagner production in a pocket version. Not only because all the instruments that we need to fit on the stage and on the pit, but also we need to bring this magnificent sense of and grandiosity of the show that Wagner has envisioned in his mind through the music. So the challenge to put together music and the staging here, it's quite big. This is the moments that I really want to be more like a film director instead of an opera director, because there are so many images that are on the music that I really want to put on stage. So I need to find out the best elements that we have in that moment, like the use of projections and of course the singers by themselves, to create all this atmosphere. And of course everything will be leading by the music, that it will be wonderful conducted by Maestro Moscovich. So in order to put all this together, there's a lot of work to do before deciding or taking a final decision on how to put this on stage. And the first thing is, of course, going through the music, that in this case is quite it is quite complex, as Jose Luis already told. It's a process that it's a transition moment. When Wagner is creating a new way of doing opera in all Europe, and is not only showcasing different scenes or just different pieces of music and arias, ensembles, duets, etc., but it's also how to create a storyline that keeps flowing without interruption. And by this moment in the 19th century, there was also starting this idea that tried to approach as much as possible to reality. So Wagner is in some way, this is the first the first intent of trying to do this kind of transformation. And usually in history, it does, any kind of transformation doesn't happen just right away. It takes a long time to develop. So what we are watching here is just the beginning, the first tries to lead to this verism and to try to be as closer as reality. But at the same time, we have all these fable, all these legends, and all these conceptual ideas that are mixing together. So it's kind of challenging to put in some way something that is more close to the fantasy with something that is very realistic. And Wagner uses a lot of music and long extensions of music just to give time for the scenes to develop. So in difference as in a different way as the previous operas, what we are watching here is that things are going on in the real time. It's not the short version. It's not like, okay, make it very quickly. Even the storyline is still like, okay, girl meets the man and fall in love and let's get married. Yeah, it's kind of fast forward, but anyway, it's taking a long time. And what is really important is how to feel all that music and to interpret all those little subtleties that Wagner is using in the music, that are of course not just because he wanted to extend the opera, but he really wanted to show different aspects of the human being. So being said that, there's a lot to research about the different two periods that are involved to create this show. The first one is of course, the Romanticism and the 19th century, with all the changes and the ideas that were in that moment going on. That was the moment that when Wagner wrote this opera. But also we need to go back to the 17th century to understand what was going on in Europe in general, and why it was so important, all the stuff about navigation and trying to find different paths and different routes to go to Asia. So what I will do is I will start showing you some references for that we have been researching for our production, while I'm explaining a little bit why are we taking these references in order to create a concept for our show. So so these references that you are watching here are going to be for the female chorus. And as you can see, there's a lady embroidering on the left side, and even Europe was growing a lot. There was just a lot of countryside and little towns around. Technology was around, was increasing all around, but it didn't get as fast as we usually thought about the 17th century. People who were still in the little towns live a very calm and very yeah, a very calm life, and their major activities were related in this moment to the countryside, but also merchandising was growing by this moment. So most of these little towns were getting involved to create all the new fabrics, because before this time, the usual way to arrive to the east was just crossing where is Turkey and Jerusalem, and going to that route that was called the Silk Route to reach China and India. But since the Turkish and the New Empire blocked that section, all the people from Europe need to find out another way to reach Asia. So they start going around Africa until they reach that very difficult section to cross by, that is the Cape of I just lost the name in English, Cabo de Buena Esperanza.
We hope.
Yeah, Good Hope, thank you. That was very, very tricky to cross by. So that was the main place to go. And once you cross that section, you can go very, very fast directly to India and China, and to pick up some of the elements that you need to create the fabrics and other stuff like species and so on. So they were trying to create all these things now in Europe because it was very, very expensive. So they just get some of the inks and the colors that we'll use to add the color to the fabric, and they try to do it now in Europe. So that's why during this period, all the things that had to do with the spinning, with embroidery, with the creation of fabrics, was becoming very, very, very important by that time. So can we go to the next one, please? So many times the people of these small towns and that were around or very close to the sea get involved into merchandising. It was not only like creating the fabrics, but also like the importing and exporting products from Asia. And that was the way that they just receive them and then distribute them to the rest of Europe. That's why these different places, mainly in the Netherlands and England, Portugal, they became very, very wealthy just because all this merchandising that they were doing with Asia. So as you can see on the right picture, all the town were really involved into that. And of course, in order to travel those long distances, the navigation was very, very important also for these little towns. The next one, please. So the travelings through around Africa to reach Asia become more frequent every time, but they were also in the need of more new technologies, and even they were very traditional in the way that they do things. The new things like the spy glasses with the new lenses that they were creating, and the compass, and many other ways to navigate through the sea, facilitate the way for them to really go through the all around Africa, which was actually very, very dangerous. There were a lot of risky places where they can just get stuck and die and lost their ships and the whole crew in there. And one of them was the Cape of Good Hope, where it's actually where this character that is the Dutchman will try to cross that cape, but he is not getting that. So finally he said, I don't care if I'm going to stay here for the whole eternity, but I will cross this section, and I will defeat the elements. And it seems that somebody who was very wicked heard him and decided to take his word, and then he was transformed with his whole crew into ghosts and were condemned to stay there for eternity until a lovely woman and faithful woman could be in love and could sacrifice herself in order to rescue him. So that was part of the things that were coming with this legend. The next one, please. So as we are watching now, we are also watching some of the references for the costumes that Califlor, our costume designer, has been gathering to create her own costume designs. And as you can see, they were usually very short. The pants were very short in order that they can move easily, and of course they will get wet a lot in the sea. The ships were not as big as we thought. They were very crowded, and they have to be a lot of people inside of them. So they have to be ready to get dry and to share the food and share the water. And it was a very complex, and the dynamics that were in between the sailors, they developed this not only a friendship, but they became a real family all together. And they support in between, because it was so hard to be alone in the sea, that they really need support, and them even in between the different ships. Can we go to the next one, please? So as we can see here, this was like the normal costume for a sailor. It was mostly a very long sleeve shirt with very simple materials, and pants, stockings, shoes, and that was also, and probably a hat like we saw in the previous one. So they can really feel comfortable, that it can get dry very, very fast if they for sure will get wet, and that they can be able to move. It was a very physical and very challenging in terms of body activity and physical activity for them. So they had really to be strong enough and ready to move, and to be aware not to fall into the sea. Can we go to the next one, please? So here we are getting to one of our first characters, whose name is Eric. Eric, it doesn't specify exactly what he does in this little town, but for sure he might be related with the same merchandising or sailing stuff, because that was the main activity of the people on the port. And he wants to be Senta's husband, and it seems that they have been dating kind of for a while already. And of course there was not another man that is around, and he's already there with her. So she is kind of accepting, because that was also the way that girls in the little towns live their lives. I mean, they met a young man, and eventually they decide that they were going to get married, and they just keep going and joining their lives and their fortunes they have in some way. But in this case, Eric is not a wealthy man. Even it doesn't say that he's poor, but is not as wealthy as Dalan will discover in the next with the Dutchman. And he's related with hunting and other stuff that are around. Of course, he's now one more member of the society and the town that they are living at. So here you can see another references for the costume that Kali is still working on. And we can go to the next one. So now we go to the character of Daland. Daland belongs to this sector of the people that were trying to really improve, and he is the captain of this ship. He is relating with merchandising and traveling and getting all these products from Asia and bringing to the town. So that's a very profitable activity. And of course, he wants to earn more, and he is very interested in economics and to have a better life, not only for him but also for his daughters. So as we can see, he has a better costume, and this is again, this is the reference is not still the design that we are going to use, but he can be one of the wealthiest men in the little town, since he has a ship and he can pay a crew to go and to go directly to the different places to sell and to distribute these products. The next one, please. So before starting talking a little bit more about Senta, I want to talk a little bit also about the romantic concepts. I was talking previously about how difficult it is to create this show that is in the transition of two different moments. On one side, we have all the romantic concepts about love that were actually taken from the medieval legends. During the medieval time, there was something that was known as a courtesan love, that was about all these impossible loves that they were not related with the carnal or the sexual attraction. It was more like an idea of the perfect woman and the perfect marriage and the perfect companion that you might have. And during all the Romanticism and the first half of the 19th century, there were a lot of these kind of stories. Also taken from the medieval times, there were other concepts. There were two possibilities about the reference for the woman behavior, and it was taken from the Bible. So the first one was Eve, that was the woman that make the sin of taking the fruit of this tree, and once she ate the fruit and gave it to Adam, it was all the whole humanity was condemned. So there was one kind of woman in that moment, and the other one was the Virgin Mary. So one was a sinner, the other one was salvation, was the most pure, the ideal of femininity. So most of the heroines at the beginning of the 19th century were trying to approach to this image of the Virgin Mary, the perfect woman that will be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, but also that will be able to lead the man into the salvation, into becoming a best man. So in order to this character Senta approaches, and it's completely this kind of idea of the woman that is able to save a man that has committed a sin. In this case can be pride or sober, just thinking that the Dutchman was trying to be superior than the elements. That was a very common way of thinking of the 17th century, when they were trying through science to conquer our nature. But this woman that is very pure, and that her fidelity it's against every challenge, she might be the one who saves this man. So for the character of Senta, we are thinking about a kind of dress as the one that you are watching here, with all this embroidery and the corset and the long and very puffy sleeves, that you will see in the next picture how cauliflower is representing it for us. So can we go to the next one, please? So this will be these are actually the costume designs from cauliflower, and here we can see Senta uh, in a version that is very close to the previous image that you already seen, and the greenish color will be close also to create this kind of relationship with her, with the sea, of her with the sea. So, and in the other hand, we have the Dutchman. And for the Dutchman, there's a very strong precision that he has to be wearing a Spanish suit, black suit, or black costume from the 16th century. So this character was trapped almost a century ago. And these are kind of the approach that we are going to have for these two characters. And can we go to the next one? So now, what we have here are Peter Crompton's stage designs. And in this case, as we were saying, it's very hard to approach a very realistic concept, because we have these two different options. You can go very, very realistic to match all the music that Wagner has composed for this play, or you can go a little bit more conceptual. And in this case, Peter and I have decided to go into the conceptual way. One of the main reasons for that was also about the same concept that I already explained to you about the women, because Senta, the Dutchman, mainly the two of them, but also the rest of the characters, are more concepts than real characters. They are representing fidelity. They're representing the condemned man for the eternity. In some way, I was talking to Jose Luis that this storyline reminds me a little bit to The Beauty and the Beast. The way that a man full with pride is just commit an excess or defeat the elements, and then the spirits punish him by transforming him in a kind of a monster, in this kind a ghost, and only the love of a pure lady is going to be able to save him. So these kind of fables are representing archetypes, and the archetypes that is not only about a very specific storyline, but it's about that only when you are kind of blinded of sober or pride or of all these kind of scenes that you cannot see reality, the only thing that can save you is love. So that concept is beyond any era, any period, and it's of course still available nowadays. So that's why we are trying to work this, not trying to represent the realistic side of the ship and the realistic side with all the projections, but more the concept of to tell the story. And the story is about the human beings, two human beings, one that is suffering a lot, and the other who is ready to save him and to love him and to care for him. And I think that's a really lovely story that has to be told. And then, so what you are seeing there in the background, that is just like the very small fraction of the ship. That will be a wagon that we're going to be able to push in to the stage. So can we see the next one? And that ship will be able to play in different ways, not only as the actual ghost ship of the Dutchman, but also as Dalanship. So we can play in both senses, and we also have the projections to support the play, because there are moments that they are supposed to be two of the ships at the same time. So with this same set, we are planning to bring different elements so we can work and develop more all the acting and the performance of the singers to really tell the story and to create very intimate scenes. Because what is very interesting in Wagner is that we have in one hand all these great sceneries and all these huge scenes with the chorus, but we also have this very intimate and mostly like a soliloquize of the characters that are really trying to find out and revealing their souls. So that I think that this concept will help us a lot with that. For the second act, can we change? Thank you very much. So for the second act, we are going to have same part of the same elements, but transform them into the interior. And we are going to have some projections on the sails that they are hanging there, and of course bring some furniture and other elements that make this a very cozy house where Senta is going to meet the Dutchman for the second act. For the third act, can we change the slide, please? We are going to play this on the port, so we can see part of Dalan's ship, but also the older ship of the Dutchman, and create the illusion that it's going away, and then the transformation once Senta sacrifices herself. So we are going to try to keep all the action moving and alive all the time, so we can balance these two moments that we were talking about. The concept of the romanticism of these characters, of these legends, of these fables, but also the realism that it's implied and it's requested within the music for the characters. So it's going to be quite a challenge, and I'm quite really looking forward to start already with the rehearsals, because we have a wonderful cast, and I think this will be really a great experience. So I think that we can end in this moment the presentation that we have here, the slide presentation, and open the mic for the questions and answers.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both Ragnar and Jose Luis. We can open up to questions, and first of all, Emma's just put up the slide that these are the dates for the performances of the Flying Dutchman: May 26th, May 28th at 2 o'clock, a matinee, June 3rd, an evening, and June 4th, another matinee. And so I've already got my tickets, so I'm excited and I can't wait to be there. I'm going to be there on May 28th. So we also want to let you know that in conjunction with having the Flying Dutchman over in Palo Alto, we're going to have our normally a party that we would have during the year for Richard's birthday, which occurs earlier in May, but we decided to marry it to the Flying Dutchman. So we're going to have a little after party, a very casual little meetup in downtown Palo Alto with light refreshments and snacks. So keep that in mind. If you don't have to go to a performance to come to the little meetup. But we encourage you to buy tickets to support this production of Wagner in, I guess I could put my video back on, but I won't. Having Wagner back in our midst, as it were, after the unmentionable that just took place in the last 2 years. So if you would like to ask a question, I can take questions. If you'd like to ask it yourself, you can. Otherwise, put it in the chat or the Q&A, and I can feed those questions out. Or if you'd like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. If you have a question to ask, is there anybody out there?
I ask you, Terry, to start your video so we can see you.
Oh, okay. Brave souls that you are. Hi.
Right. Hi.
So if anybody has a
Um,
question,
Terry, while people are coming up with questions, just an additional data point. We have a free preview with piano that involves the principal singers and an accompanist
oh
that will
goodness,
take place on the 18th of May, Thursday night.
okay.
That will be it's actually mentioned in the on the website as well. That's another opportunity for people who are not familiar with the piece or would like to see what this is like, to come and get acquainted with the cast and hear the wonderful singers that we have. It's just an hour, and there's also refreshments at the end of that. It's an opportunity to experience the cast in advance of the actual staged performances. So keep that in mind and look that up on our website.
Okay, great. That's really good to know because of course, you know, we've probably seen, you know, several dozen amongst us different productions of Flying Dutchman, not just in the US, but abroad. But it's always good to get a little bit of preview and get yourself into the mood in advance. I have a question from Deborah Marion. Was the Dutchman sailing past the Cape of Good Hope?
Yes, yes, he was. This is what the legend says. Keep in mind that the Wagner's Flying Dutchman is his own creation, and he's his own poet, and he's taken licenses with that. But he did not. I think he did not stray from the original story. That he heard the stories through Heine. In one other German writer that captured it from original folklore, but there is the name of a captain by the last name of Van der Decken, who was supposed to be a Dutch, essentially merchant marine, and he was indeed sailing around the Cape when the storm caught him, and when he made his vow to cross, or stay to eternity until he could cross.
Okay, well, I think that answers the question. Do we have any other questions? If anybody wants to ask themselves, you're welcome to do so. Just raise your hand. I don't see any hand raises. I don't really have any questions.
I have raised a hand. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. What is your opinion about the mental saneness of Santa? She is often depicted as a little touched in her head, or just carried away with extremely romantic notions, falling in love with the portrait, and then ready to sacrifice herself for an idea, actually not for a man. How do you view it?
Well, it's very hard to put it out nowadays, because of course we have a very different relationship now. But I think that what is implied there is probably two old souls that are being reunited. Thank you, reunited in this moment after a long time, or probably it's more about compassion, and that's what she's mentioning during all the time. It's like somebody has to save this man. He's going to be there for forever, and someone has to do it. And it's, of course, it's an idealistic idea. And now that we are more related into the individualism, that we are taking more care about ourselves. But previously, this idea, it was more related to the all the people that were related to you. It's like fixing things that are helping the whole community, and the whole people who are related. Is having more like the feeling and the understanding that you cannot help yourself only by taking care of you. You need to take care of the rest that are involved. And I think that Senta is quite aware about it. Of course, if we think about her like a 21st century girl, we just say that she is completely crazy and she is out of her mind. And actually, in the storytelling, the people around her is also thinking that she has just lost her mind. But in the medieval times, they were really dependent on each other, and most of the principles for the romanticisms are taken from the medieval times. So that's why many of those concepts that are probably too elevated for most of us nowadays, and we just cannot understand them. Why are you going to sacrifice for somebody that you don't know? How are you going to put your life in risk on risk because of that? But if we think, we try to understand that other sense, and even in Catholicism, it's exactly what Jesus did. He just died for the rest of the people, and that's the principle. That's the main principle of compassion and love. So that's why I was saying that is not probably is not a realistic opera, but the concept is very powerful. And it still, after so many years and so many decades, it still moves us because it has some inner truth, or at least a very powerful wish of a better humanity. And I think that Santa is representing that kind of better humanity.
It's also, if I may add to what Ragnar just said, which is right on, the cues that Wagner gives us in the text, the text that really drives the whole dramatic action in the score, show that he wants Senta to be perceived that way. The first words that the Dutchman sings in that incredible second act duet with Senta, wie aus der Ferne längst vergangener Zeiten spricht dieses Mädchenbild zu mir. So she speaks to him from times, long ago and far away. She's an old soul, which is what Ragnar said earlier. This is the first perception that the Dutchman has of Senta. They meet, there's an immediate understanding that she knows what this is about. It's not craziness, it's a mysticism, it's a connection, that transcends the temporal. It's really old and it's really timeless. And in fact, the final outcome is a timeless outcome. The indication in the score is that they ascend to heaven together. They essentially become one thing at the end of the opera, and that's as sappy as it may seem in a retelling by me. When you put it in a Wagner score and you present it in the theater with the orchestra and all that, it's really fantastic. It's really a sublime moment. So that's really the magic of Wagner, that he's able to take that topic that can be so easily trivialized or dismissed as old-fashioned or anachronistic, and create a story that goes like a needle on the record directly to that shared compassion and humanity that we all have. And in those compelling topics of love, of loyalty, of his recurrent theme of salvation of man through the purity of woman and so on, the purity of feeling of soul of a woman, those are the themes that Wagner finds to be most compelling through his entire composing career, and that give him his biggest hits. The entire Ring, the operas that precede the Ring, the later operas, all have some form or other of that topic. And you'd think, enough already, you did it once or twice and it's enough, but you can continue to recreate that same idea and still get to the audience and still get us to emote with him, because what he's drilling into is our common humanity. That's really what I think is so extraordinary about his work.
I have a couple questions now stacked up here. Deborah Marion asks, why was the Dutchman cursed? And I've got 3 other questions behind that. So why was he cursed?
There is one version of the tale of the legend that says that he said, I forget the exact words, but something to the effect that he would either sell his soul or do something kind of a Faustian bargain, in order to get through the Cape of Good Hope, and that the devil heard him and put him to do this, but the angel of God gave him a way out if he could find a woman whose pure love would redeem him. So there's different kind of mystical interpretations of that, but there's one at least that I have read that says that the devil condemned him, but the angel of God gave him a way out, and that's actually embodied in the first aria of the Dutchman. He says that he refers to the angel of God and says, you gave me this opportunity, but I don't believe I'll ever find a woman. So it's built into the libretto.
Okay. One question going back to your comment about the preview. What time will that preview be?
I believe it's 7 p.m. 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay. And folks, I'll get that information and put it up on our website and also push it out in my next email.
Wonderful.
So,
thank you.
Thank you for that. I know there's a lot of people that just really can't get enough of this, so they'll want to be to every
yes,
performance. We hope.
Also, it's a wonderful opportunity for people who want to bring, maybe a younger member of the family or somebody who has never been to an opera, and they're, apprehensive about, starting the operatic involvement with a Wagner opera. So come and see what it's like. I think that most people that have come into contact with live music have a much more positive reaction to it than they expect. So it's a great opportunity, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, and how can you miss with a swashbuckling ships and all that kind of stuff? It's intoxicating. These early operas are really intoxicating.
Absolutely.
Okay, Diane Herbst has a question. How are you handling the scene with the women spinning yarn? Will you have them at spinning wheels, or the women be doing something else? Like taking a spin class. I saw it done that way once.
Well, we're not doing, no.
As Anna Russell would say, I'm not making this up. So thank you, Diane. So how are the women going to hang out there?
Yes, we are going to be working on the spinning wheels. Of course, they are not going to be real spinning wheels, and it will be quite tricky to be working on that. But I will also add other elements and other activities related with the creation of fabrics. There are going to be a couple of women embroidering or dyeing some of the fabrics on ink. But I love a lot, and of course it's not only because I like it, because it's what they are actually singing about, the spinning, the spinning of and creating the threads. And it's also a metaphor of the threads of the fate that are all together across in between. So I think it's a very powerful scene, and of course we are going to do our best to have the scene as it was conceived by Wagner.
Fantastic. So I got a very nice thank you from Lois Silverstein, and she does write some reviews on some of the different formats here around the Bay Area. I think SFCD is one of them. Okay, we have a question from Stephen Ziles. Daland as a character in the opera seems to be a bit callous. Well, that's an understatement. He's willing to give his daughter to the Dutchman without asking her first. Well, that's common then. He does later, in exchange for the Dutchman's treasure. How do you see the relationship between Daland and Senta, and Daland and the Dutchman? That's very thought-provoking.
Yes, well, as Terry already said, it was very common by those days. Marriage was not about love; it was about relationship in between families. So the fathers usually took those decisions uh, for their children, and they need to find out the best family or the best husband to relate with. And it was not about love, it was about money, it was about economics. So in that case, of course, they thought, or the father thought, we know best what is best for your future. So it was very, very common by that time. Anyway, what we can see here is that he is actually asking her, if you agree, we are going to you're going to get married tomorrow with him. So that thing actually, it's a big consideration for her, and I think that he does love her a lot, and he really cares for her, and he thinks that he will be the best for her, and of course for himself too, because he will receive a huge amount of money just by having a son-in-law like that. But I think that he's really thinking for her sake, and in order to the relationship between Dallin and the Dutchman, I think it's more like a commercial transaction. It's not really that they are trying to become friends. It's like, okay, you have something that I need, and I have something that you might need. So do we agree? Do we have an agreement now? So it's not really about, they are not talking about love in this moment, and it was not supposed to happen by that time. But of course, because it was written and composed on the 19th century, the factor of love will be important and will appear as an important facet. So since the very first moment that Senta and Dallin watch each other and see each other, they know already, both of them, that they were connected for a very long time ago, probably timeless by that time. So they know for sure that they were supposed, or they were intended to be together by fate or by destiny, or somehow they were supposed to be together since the beginning of times, and they know it. So probably that will create that kind of relationship of love, and somehow that's what happens when you find a person that really is the one for you. You know that somehow this person will be related with you for the rest of your life. And it seems that it has to be like that, and it has been written like that for I don't know, like forever.
I think it might be good to also mention that in terms of the treatment of the relationship between the characters, that Wagner wants to set up a certain spookiness in the way that the ship appears, with its leitmotif and all of that, but that immediately in the treatment of both the text and the music, the relationships become normalized. In other words, the Dutchman is not the green monster from the lagoon, that comes out and it looks different. He looks like a successful merchant, that is a captain of a ship. So why wouldn't Dalland want to have this guy marry his daughter if he's rich, and he's not an old man, because his curse has made him timeless. There are indications, some of them really interesting and funny in a way, because of their ambiguity in the text. Like, for example, when Daland asks the Dutchman if his ship has had any trouble, any damage from the storm, and he responds in German, mein Schiff ist fest, es leidet keinen Schaden, which means really is an ambiguous statement. It means my ship is pretty tight, pretty solid. It doesn't have any damage, but it also is lighted kind and schaden means it doesn't get damaged. And this is, I believe, an allegory of himself. I cannot die, the ship cannot die. Things are not disappearing or decaying because they can't, because there's a curse behind that. So once you put a being like that in front of Senta, he doesn't look unappealing. He doesn't look, like something she would revile. It looks, normal. They are in that situation. She doesn't know. In fact, that it's that very fact, that very perception of the Dutchman as an appealing kind of character, mysterious but appealing, that gets Eric so concerned. Eric is the one who sees the Dutchman as something spooky and says, gosh, you are in Satan's hands, you have to break out of this spell. He sees it as a spell when nobody else does, right? Probably also guided by his own love of Senta, which, by the way, is an interesting way of looking at the opera. In the first act, if you look at Wagner's method, the whole first act is really about the Dutchman's longing, for solution, for love, for redemption. The second act is all about Senta's love, and her obsession with the theme of the Dutchman. And the third act is largely about Eric's struggle with that love, with his own love and with her love for someone else. So even though the topic is very mythical and not realistic, all of the feelings are the feelings that we can relate to. Love, longing, jealousy, despair over somebody else's misguided love in our perception. So it's really ultimately the whole opera is guided by human feeling, not by necessarily the telling of a tale. And that's why it's so effective. It brings us in and makes us feel those feelings. Because we can all relate to them. You don't have to be in love with a ghost, to understand what love is, or what despair is, or what longing is. I think that's the beauty of these stories and their appeal.
So let's see. Yeah, I remember long ago, it was, I think probably, oh gosh, over 20 years ago, that we had Flying Dutchman in San Francisco, and I created a program around it, The Restless Spirit Longing for Home. And that's where he is. He is restless. He has not found something that will take him out of this torment that he's in. He's looking for a safe harbor, a place to land, somewhere he can be part of the community, and he never finds it because people don't understand him. They see him as a ghost, they see him as a evil or something. Right. And this is the bucolic people against maybe sort of a more heroic person, that they see that right. as a threat to their society. And right. So it's a theme that goes throughout everything. Right.
It's yeah. very interesting to see also how much Wagner understood this. I mean, how deliberate this was. There's interesting commentary, quotes directly from Wagner about, for example, that the theme, one of the first themes in the Dutchman's aria, is this sequence that he describes as a longing that he felt, at a certain point in his life. He was quite young, actually, when he composed this, in a moment when he was having a terrible identity crisis and problems with his own love life and so on. It was felt very much lost and at sea, and this was the music that was in his head when he was composing the Dutchman's longing and the Dutchman's despair. So he clearly wrote into the Dutchman a lot of his own despair and a lot of his own feelings about, feeling unanchored and unmoored. And so it's not surprising that we can relate to those, because they are, they're not an artificial thing, they're human emotions that he was putting on paper.
Right. Right. Well, Deborah Marion has another question. Was Senta in a relationship with Eric? And is that why she is not the faithful woman who would save the Dutchman?
She is in a relationship with Eric, absolutely, and Eric is not a great prospect. He's a hunter, and the other girls laugh at the fact that she has a kind of a poor boyfriend and so on. But when she connects with the Dutchman and they have their duet and all of that, she says to Eric, "I cannot see you anymore. I cannot be with you anymore." And Eric doesn't understand, but she's not trying to play both ends of this. She is essentially determined to renounce Eric because she now has to deal with the Dutchman. And Eric says to her, "But how come, you swore me, eternal love and so on." And she says, "Did I do that? No, I didn't do that." And that's where he launches into his aria and all of that. So there is confusion, and there is some difference of interpretation about exactly how much she promised him, but she doesn't really lead him on incorrectly. She says, "I have to stop seeing you." So faithfulness, understood in the way we understand it today, the idea that you're seeing 2 or 3 people at the same time, she wasn't doing that. She said, "No, I have to cut with you because I've now found, my purpose." So I don't think she was unfaithful.
Well, if he was a hunter, though, I would posit this, that perhaps Dahlin needed him more than Senta needed him. If he was a hunter, he was possibly in the fur trade, and this would be merchandise that Dahlin would be transporting on his ship, perhaps to sell. And he was part of the commerce section of this.
Entirely possible. That's a very interesting insight that you bring, Terry, because there's a ship and then there's a spinning scene and all that. It's all part of the same empire. Dahlin is not just a guy with a ship. He's not in the transport business. He's in the industrial business. He has a mill. He has a mill where they manufacture either sails for ships or clothing for people or whatever it is, but the women are actually working as part of a link in a chain that's much larger than that. And Eric is probably part of that too, whether it's furs or something else, but clearly not a valued part of the chain. He is somebody who's in fact insecure about it, and at some point, when Senta has just sung her ballad, he comes to her and says, "Your father is coming back. I saw him from the hill. And, when he shows up, he's probably going to want to do what he's been saying for a while that he wants to do, which is to give you a husband." And, she is sort of clueless about it. She's not thinking about it, but he is thinking about it. And he is insecure. He thinks that Dahlin is going to come and try to find her husband. Is not necessarily going to be him. It's not going to be Eric. Because he doesn't make enough money, and he knows, and he says, "Your father is so focused on the money." And sure enough, he shows up with this guy that has a ship full of stuff in it that's a lot more than what a huntsman can produce. So there's all of that mercantilist kind of spirit of the age built into this story to give it a little bit of a prosaic edge, but it's still the myth, but it's just trying to give it some anchors in reality so that you can understand, what each of the characters is going through in their struggles. That's why I said that to me, the third act is about Eric. It's his struggle to figure out why this is happening to him.
Yeah, you could speculate a lot about these characters. They were not your typical archetypes, but
no, that's
bordering
right.
on it. Yeah, right. in some respects, and it's always endlessly fascinating what you can go digging around in these works and Wagner's own writings to find little nuggets that might add some additional insight, since he's not available to comment on his own. Well, I don't have any more questions. I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for your time. It's always wonderful talking to you, and it's so wonderful to meet Ragnar the first first time I've met you virtually, and it's wonderful what you're creating down there in this little theater. I want to tell you, I had the best time with your Salome. I thought that was one of the most remarkable productions. It's amazing what you folks can do in that tiny little theater, and you had the orchestra on the stage in these little catacombs.
Yes.
Aside, and man, was that a production. I had such a good time at that. So
well, that was actually Ragnar's work also as a stage director. Yes, we had a
good Lord, that was wonderful. And the costumes, we won't go into the costumes at this point in time.
That was one of the few times when we chose to stage something, the way I like to say, kind of on the surface of Jupiter. We don't do that. We normally try to stay with the original period, because part of the philosophy is that with modern technology and a modern understanding and sensibility, we can actually create something that very likely will approach what the composer and the librettist had in mind, but we can deliver it with a lot more precision than what was available in the 1800s in terms of lighting and projections and all of these other things. But in the case of Salome, it just lent itself so nicely to a post-nuclear Holocaust.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah,
it was so
way.
effective, and everybody seemed to be suffering from radiation poisoning.
That's right.
Well, I will now set us up for the next talk we have, and I'm segueing away from Wagner to going to the other Richard, but no less a genius in the operatic world. We're having a once every 33 years occurrence coming to San Francisco. We will have Strauss's epic tale, Die Frau und Schatten, coming into San Francisco Opera this summer. And pardon me. In our next meeting will be on April 29th. That's 2 in this 1 month. I want to let everybody know, 2 for 1. It will be a Zoom because Larry is based in New York. He has just completed a book, The Shadow of the Empress, a fairy tale opera, and the end of the Habsburg monarchy. And it discusses the Frau und Schatten in the political specter of the time in which it was written. So we'll have Larry Wolf with us at that time. And I did want to say that Strauss was greatly influenced by Wagner. We all know that. But his father forbade him to play and learn Wagner's music until he was 16, when he snuck it in and he got the score of Tristan and Isolde. And of course, at 16, Tristan and Isolde, you know what that must have done to him. So it's all full of wonderful things. And so we're going to explore the Die Frau und Schatten and the Wagnerian influences, and really do a deep dive into the work itself before we have it on stage in San Francisco. And then, as we've already mentioned, there will be a little event, get together, a soiree as it is, on May 28th after the Flying Dutchman in Palo Alto. We'll push more information out to our members and also to you, Jose and Ragnar. Then coming up in June, again, I'm on a roll, more Frau und Schatten. We are inviting back Professor Catherine Sire, who will be talking about Frau und Schatten. She is an adjunct associate professor of music down at UCLA, and she's been a frequent guest of ours in the past. So that's a double dose of the Die Frau und Schatten. And I think that is all the comments I have here for today. So
Harry,
yes.
before you wrap up, and since you're talking about Frau und Schatten, which is such a fantastic piece.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
For anybody who cares to consider this advice, there is an amazing book that gives great perspective on the Habsburg monarchy and the change that losing the Austro-Hungarian Empire represented in the world and in Europe. And that's a book by Stefan Zweig that's called Die Welt von Gestern, the world of yesterday. A short novel that essentially describes what that what the world was like. It might be really excellent preparation for understanding the context in which this opera was written.
Yeah, it's always good to get the backstory on these
Right. Very
huge,
complex.
epic. It really is an epic. It's almost like The Ring in one evening because there's so much going on there, and
Right.
performances are few and far between. So I am recommending, if you like the music of Strauss, and you like the glory of the Habsburg Empire, you would do well to attend some of these lectures, read up on it, and educate yourself, and it will help you get into this very interesting and compelling opera with such gorgeous, gorgeous music. But it's a heroic effort, and you have to get Helden tenors, and you got to have like 3 Brunhildes on the stage at once. I mean, it's pretty amazing what
Very
they
difficult.
do, and
Mhm.
very few times that it does get produced. It's been a while in the US. I know they had a performance I saw down in Los Angeles years and years ago, and I saw it, I believe, in Chicago, Paul Kern production. And then also at the Metropolitan Opera, and in Europe, in Vienna with Sinopoli conducting. Wow.
Yes.
So anyway, it'll be worth your effort to come to these lectures, and also to read up on your own and do your own research on it. So I thank you for your comments as well.
Terry, I have a comment too.
Yes.
I love Zweig. Nobody knows him here. He is such a European writer.
Yes.
And he wrote a great novel about Magellan, speaking of navigation.
Uh-huh.
And this is such a great little novel. He didn't write anything big, but it's about old maps and lack of navigation in Magellan's time, and him finding the Cape Horn passage by chance. You got to read it too.
The list is growing.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes, and again, one of our viewers here has asked again the name of this Zweig novel, The World of Yesterday.
The World of Yesterday, Die Welt von Gestern, The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig, Z-W-E-I-G.
Yeah,
like
great.
branch. Yeah,
that's fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to Die Frau.
wonderful.
I'm looking forward to the Dutchman.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that as well. And
all right.
So we're very fortunate to have such wonderful productions coming up for our viewing pleasure. And I don't have any more questions. So thank you so much for spending your time with us. We really do appreciate. I hope our bringing your production of Flying Dutchman to the forefront of the Wagner Society will just drive up your ticket sales hugely, and we'll get you some more information about our little soiree, and we'll revel with you.
Thanks again very much to all of you, to you,
Yes.
Terry and Emma, and we will be in touch, in Ragnar, and we will be in touch soon.
Yes, thank you for that. So at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and adjourn until the next time. Thank you for attending, folks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.